Hello everyone. We are really pleased to welcome you to this Facebook Live, and we are really pleased to welcome David Atkin, who is a co-founder of Adalo, which is a tech startup that enables everyone to create an app without writing any line of code. So why did we do this live? We think that in the situation of today, it's really important to know how to launch a project without having a CTO, and we think also that no-code skills are the future, and it's really important to learn how to do it the earlier the better. So I will introduce David. David, we saw on your LinkedIn page that you have many hats. Yeah. That you're a big expert of design. You're product designer, UX UI designer, graphic designer, product manager, and more. So maybe you will tell us why did you build Adalo and Adalo. So I introduced Adalo earlier. The goal is really to enable everyone to create an app. And then, so the summary of this live. So there will be a presentation of Adalo and success stories applied to entrepreneurship. David will show a demo of Adalo, and there will be a bit of Q&A. So I will ask some questions, and David will answer. And after, you can ask your question, and David will answer too. So we can start.
Awesome. Okay. All right, let me share my screen here as well. Make sure that is working well. Can you see my screen?
Can you see the screen? Yes. Okay. Yes, we can.
Okay. All right. Perfect. All right. Well, welcome. Like Julie said, Adalo is really all about being able to launch your idea without coding at all. I'm going to go through just kind of an intro to what no code is first, talk about how really this applies to entrepreneurship, show you guys some amazing success stories already on our platform, and then give you a demo, and then we can get into a bunch of Q&A. So really excited to be here today. So first of all, what is no code? I'm sure you've heard about it at some point, maybe a little bit. So actually what happened was I've been in no code for quite a while now, but I figured, hey, what better way to get an actual definition of no code than by talking with a ton of the experts. So I interviewed over 10 experts in the no code space, and we got over 1,400 responses. And I tried to come up with a report about it. We can get into that later, but one of the things was, what is no code? And really from this, no code is the art of creating a unique solution to a problem that could have been written with code, but the individuals or team have chosen to use visual methods without coding. And there are a couple things I want to point out there, 3 key points. So the first is that you're really trying to solve a problem, and the end result of that solution can take many forms. So it does really span a wide range of things, from not just mobile apps that would be on your phone, but also web apps, web software, websites, voice, e-commerce, automation, right? At the end of the day, you're trying to solve some problem, either your problem or someone else's problems without writing code. And that is kind of the second key point here, is that you're not necessarily, it doesn't mean that no code is involved. It just means that you're not primarily doing it with like writing the whole thing with code. So you might be copying and pasting in little bits here or there, but you're not necessarily writing any of the code yourself. And then the final one is that the solution really must be unique, so that you're not necessarily taking a templated solution from some other just regular SaaS software, right? Because that would solve a problem, and you wouldn't have to do code with those types of solutions, but you're really making it yourself. So those are kind of the 3 big points. And it's a really exciting change for entrepreneurs. A ton of those responses that we got back from that whole survey we did was you really hear entrepreneurs talk about how they're able to actually take this idea that's in their head and create a really working, functional app is huge. You're kind of, we heard from a lot of people, you're able to jump from just an idea and then trying to go get funding or go get a technical co-founder to now actually having something that's functional. We can talk later about how that scales and all those sorts of things with Nocode as well. It also is perfect for the people that have struggled to learn code, like myself. I really struggled to learn code. I don't know how to code at all. But now, thanks to this no-code movement, you really can make apps without coding and really have actual users using that stuff, which means you're able to get faster feedback from whoever your target audience is, which means you're able to move faster. And then no-code actually starts to go into actual enterprise use cases as well, which I'll touch on at the end as well. So what is Adalo in the no-code space? Remember, we said this no-code space is you're just creating some problem, or you're creating some solution to a problem, right? So in terms of Adalo, it's really all about creating apps. So those would be both for mobile and for web. You'll see in the demo, but it's very drag and drop. It looks a lot like the prototyping tools, but then you're actually able to publish that stuff to your actual end result to the app stores or put it on your own website. In terms of the success of building apps and what that can mean for entrepreneurs, obviously the first is all about making a business totally out of that app, right? The second would be making a supplemental app for either your existing startup that could accelerate that, or for just an existing business in general, and that could be a small business or that could be an enterprise. And then finally, there's this whole new extremely crazy world of freelancing for the no-code space right now that's really kind of exploding. If you think back maybe 10 years ago, when all of the kind of no-code website builders came out. Again, we weren't necessarily calling it no-code at the time, but as WordPress got up and running, and Squarespace and Wix and all those types of things, you started having freelancers who were making websites for people. We're now seeing that transform and actually apply itself to apps as well. So you're able to make the website for your clients, you're able to make apps for your clients, and do a lot more. So let's get into some of those exciting success stories. So the first is all about making an actual business out of it. This is an app that's currently in progress on our platform called Sunscreen. She, like many people, experienced the difficulties of traveling. And in her particular case, she was originally born in Africa and then moved to Belgium. And there's a lot of complexities with all of the different regulations that you have to know about when you're traveling across all of those places that make it a lot more difficult, which as soon as we got into this project, I didn't even know all of that stuff, because I've been, more so just traveling from the United States where there's less of those. So this is a way for people to be able to plan their trip and know all of those things. And then the way that, she's going to make money from this is that she's actually partnering with different agencies, and then they will pay her per month for actually having their clients use this to help them plan their trips and connect with other people. And then she's hoping to also partner with hotels or other travel related businesses in this. So from the very beginning, she already is partnering because she has a working version. So she's already starting to partner with these agencies instead of going just the social media route where you're trying to get a bunch of people and then try to figure out what to do with it later. Because she actually has something working, she's able to, from the beginning, plan how she's going to make money from this. Another one is Door Club. So this is actually 3 apps in one, or actually not in one, 3. It's the company, but they actually have 3 different versions of their app. Which is pretty crazy, but possible on Adalo for you to actually share a database and then have different use cases. So, and we'll get into that in the demo, but so this particular use case is for very small landlords. And it's hard for them to, when there's big, huge apartment complexes that have multiple places all around either that state or whatever, or that part of the world. It's easier for them to have apps, but this is really for all the tons and tons of smaller landlords. And what will happen is that the renters can pay through this. So there's a payment portal for them to transfer funds through this app. And then additionally, they're able to submit their tickets. So whenever they have a repair ticket, they're able to make one, submit that. And then the cool thing is that the landlords have their own app where they can track those tickets. And then they actually submit those tickets to a third app for a bunch of contractors, local small contractors in the area, to fix all of those things. Because a lot of those landlords, those small ones, they don't have all of the, infrastructure for all of the large, contracting work that maybe exists at a much larger, kind of apartment complex, if you will. So they're really able to target into very niche use cases. And I think that's another huge thing with Nocode, is that you're able to get smaller and smaller problems and solve them and make a ton of money, because you don't have to go after huge corporations with your apps ideas now, like the huge apartment complexes. You're able to go after these small ones. In terms of steps to successfully execute, I've touched on a couple of these, but it's definitely the Sunscreen one. From the very beginning, she is considering, how she is going to make money from this, and making sure she's getting feedback from both her end users as well as those agencies who she's going to partner with. Another big thing is that, I can't stress enough how amazing Nocode is for finding your first customers and really having them use it. And it's not just a clickable prototype that doesn't actually let them save and have their own login and really interact with people. It actually helps you get your first customer as fast as possible. And that's one of the biggest advices that I could give for anyone who's trying to start something, is go and actually get a first customer as fast as possible. And that'll really help you validate your idea. And I should preference, sometimes if you're doing more like a social media type thing, the customers don't necessarily have to pay. They just need to be people that are actually using whatever problem that you're trying to solve. Those people are actually using the app in a way that solves that problem. So they're not just looking at it like you're getting feedback from your family or something like that, and they're like, that would be a cool idea. They're really using whatever it is to solve their problem. That kind of touches on another side of Nocode, and that's making an app. So not necessarily on the startup side of things, but making an app to actually supplement your existing business. So this is Mile High Karate, kind of an amazing use case for the no-code movement in general. And that is that they previously had, they wanted to have an app for their karate so they could have the students see all of their homework. And then it would also have, videos inside of there as well, so that they could see, okay, hey, this is what I have to do this week. This is how I'm going to learn this. They had a developer create it. And then unfortunately, that developer then moved on, and it was starting to be too much money, but the app wasn't really finished. And that is such a common use case for people that, in the past, before Nocode, were spending so much money trying to make something, and then it doesn't get you all the way, and then you have no control to actually finish it. So the amazing thing here is that they actually found us after trying with a developer and it not working, and then they were able to make this totally themselves in Adalo. And that was mainly because they were about ready to give up. And then their students were so excited about it that they were like, no, please, please. So they pushed through and made themselves. And that was actually right before kind of COVID was happening. And now, it's really how they fully function right now, a lot of those small businesses. And that kind of gets into the freelancing side of things as well. So again, I touch on this quite a few times, but really find an existing problem or pain point, and figure out, how your solution can solve that, as fast as possible. And then on the freelance side of things, how we actually got started was listening to that own advice as well, right? So when I was first starting Adalo, we, our platform was was possible to make apps out of code. It didn't have the best and all the possible features that we needed. But I actually went out and sold 12 apps to all these different companies and then made apps for them. So I was able to get our first customers by me using our own platform as fast as possible, right? And it wasn't the smoothest things possible, but that is, how, you all should get started. What is the fastest way that you're able to test something and get some customers, even if it's not the end result? So this kind of shows, us using that advice, as well as just the possibility of you all being freelancers and going out your all entrepreneurial mindsets and going out and trying to figure out what apps you can make for other businesses. Okay, so I'm sure you all are very excited. Okay, how are those things even possible to get made in Adalo? So I'm going to do a little live demo now. So, and anyone can go, onto adalo.com and sign up for free and play around as well. So, we want you to be able to actually make some stuff before you're even, have to pay, so you can test out ideas and all that kind of stuff. So I'm inside of Adalo right now. It looks very much like maybe if you use Adobe, Illustrator, After Effects, those types of things, or more like Illustrator. We have a bunch of artboards and stuff like that, Sketch for prototyping tools. So I have my few screens here on this demo app. And every app that you have that gets created, we start you with a login and a sign up screen. Over here on the left-hand side is the plus button, and that will let you add all the stuff to it. So you can, drag in whatever you want onto that. If you want, a navigation bar at the bottom. And then one of the kind of amazing things about Adalo is that so not only do you have these components that are kind of pre-built for people that maybe don't know or don't feel as strong with design, but we also have all the flexibility for the people like me who, are design or want to totally, I would say, customize it themselves, right? So I could add, a rectangle down here, and I could make my own. I could drag in an image and make my own type of app bar, totally customizable, right, myself. So it has the flexibility of using the kind of pre-built components, as well as it has the ability for you to kind of customize everything yourself. So let's go ahead and kind of make some actual. This is a very basic trip planning app that we're going to kind of make together here. So one thing is that, every app has a bunch of lists that you'll see in it. So I'm going to drag in here a list of different destinations that I might want people to go to, and if they're kind of planning a trip or want to see what other people have gone on. So as soon as you drag in a component, the first thing it's going to do is ask you what this is a list of. And this is really the key between the key thing and innovation I think that's happened in Nocode is that previously, if you were prototyping this, you would put in an image and some text of exactly what that fake example would be, right? And then I would do a bunch of those. But now we're actually able to hook this up to a database that we've created, which again sounds a little scary, but actually it's nothing more than just a simple spreadsheet, right? So I have a spreadsheet view here built in Adalo where I might have the name of that trip, the image, a description, a bunch of different characteristics for all of those things in my database. And we call those database collections. So again, we start you off with a user's collection, and that'll have a bunch of different properties: email, password, profile picture. And you can add whatever you want to those things. If you wanted somebody to put their, address in there, for example, you could add an address property. It's really quite simple to add and delete all the properties that you want. Additionally, you can create other collections. So in this example here, we have a bunch of destinations, places that you will want to be and go, right? So I want to go to Alaska. I want to have a family fun type of trip destination, or I want to go to Paris, or whatever those may be. And then inside of those destinations, I want there to be a bunch of different trips. So I want there to be a bunch of family fun trips or a bunch of Hawaii trips. All right. So now here's the crazy part. So all you have to do is connect that list to that set, that spreadsheet. Really, all it is a spreadsheet from the database. And then if I go and I preview this right now, and I'll have to log in here. I previously created a user for this. So I'm going to log in here. And then now, as soon as I log in, now that actually shows all of the destinations from that actual, spreadsheet view that I had just kind of created. So just like that, we have now, instead of having to manually fill out all those things, been able to get that dynamically from the database. Okay, so then the next thing is that I'm going to link this and I'm going to create a new action, and I'm going to link this over to the trip screen. So basically it's saying like, hey, as soon as I click on one of those destinations, I want to jump over to the trip screen. And then the magical thing that's happening behind the scenes is that we are actually sending the information about whatever destination that was. Let's say that's the Alaska destination or Hawaii destination over to that page. So now let's drag in another list here. I'm going to make this a card list because it can have more information. The trip has more stuff than just kind of the destination picture, right? So now I'm going to make this a list of trips. And then if I go and view this right now, this is actually going to show all trips. So if I go inside of Alaska, for example, this is showing me all the different trips that I have in my database and things that like Disney World that have nothing to do with Alaska, right? And if I go to Family Fun, it's also showing me all this stuff. So what I want to do is actually filter this so that it is just showing the current destination trips. So now if I go back inside of this and I click on Family Fun, now I see just the Family Fun trips. And if I go back and I click on Hawaii, now I see all of the Hawaii trips. So again, this actually makes it faster to prototype as well, because instead of having to make all of those individual pages like you would have to on a thing, now just one screen does all of that. So then I'm going to fill out the rest of this information. I'm also going to change this to be like a one column layout, so it's much larger here. And then so Adalo automatically is trying to guess what things should go in here, but you can also set those yourself, and those are all coming from the properties that you have from that spreadsheet view. So, for example, the subtitle here, if I don't want that to say subtitle, I actually want that to say the current trip's number of days. And the body here, I don't want that to be Lauren Ipsum. I want that to be the short description. So then when we actually go and preview those things, now when I actually go inside of Family Fun, I see all of the 4-day trip and the description and all that kind of stuff. Okay, so we're getting this thing's starting to look somewhat functional, but again, a big, huge key thing about apps is that I want people to be able, before we had started this call, I had quickly gone in here and added some of these trips manually just so we had some information filled out. But obviously the most amazing part about apps is really that logged in users who have that app download can create their own things to add to those to that database, that set of spreadsheet, right? So if you're on Twitter, right, or Facebook, you have your own logged in user and you can create your own posts and all that stuff. So in this case, we actually have a form component where you can drag in a form for them. And then in this case, I'm going to choose what this is going to create. So I want this to create a trip as soon as you do this. Now, again, Adalo is going to automatically go to the database here and see, hey, what are the properties for a trip? And they're going to be available here in the fields. And I can edit any of these, right? If I want short description here, to instead be like a multi-line thing, so it looks like you have to type more. You can change those things. You can make things required or optional. If I don't want you to have a number of days, I can make that required or not required, and you can edit all those things. And then afterwards, it will create the trip as soon as they do that, and then I want to link it back. And I should point out here as well that anytime you click on something, you can add different actions to whatever that button is actually doing, right? So in this one, it's a create action, and that's because this is a form. I could have manually added a create to any other button that I wanted to. I could have also done an update action if I wanted to update something. I could have done delete. We have trigger notifications. So if you want to send a push notification when somebody creates a new trip, you could do that. We also have some crazy custom actions that you can do as well, where you can set it up to really connect to any API, and you can have that either send an email, or you can have it connect to Shopify or Trello or Slack, or send a text message, or any of those types of things as well. So, okay, so now that I have a form here created, I'm going to show you how cool it is now how your users, in this case, Gary, could go inside of Hawaii. I could see all of the Hawaii trips here, and then I could click the plus button to go to that new form, and I could say, like, you know, surfing 101 trip, and oops, I could, you know, choose a photo for it. And again, if you're on your phone, this is just obviously a presentation view, but if you're on your form, your phone, you could actually take a photo or choose it from your, library or any of those native things as well. So then, it's it's an amazing trip to learn how to surf. And then, it could be a one-day trip here, and then I could create it. And then now that is actually going to show up in my Hawaii trips. So now I've added that as a user to whatever this is. And obviously, again, this was literally just 5 screens here for you to sign up, log in, and create these things. So you can see these things, and I'll show more of the success stories in a second, so you can see how complicated they can get. Obviously, you're probably already starting to think, well, like, I would want to add more information to that trip of like where you should go and what places you should book and what hotels you should stay at and all those fun types of things. Or maybe I want a profile so that people can see what trips I've been on and you can friend people. So all those things then are now possible with those basic things that I just showed off, which is basically being able to have a list, being able to see a detail of whatever that is, and then also being able to create new things. So now I'm going to kind of pivot over to showing a couple of those more complicated examples. So you'll start seeing apps that have tons and tons of screens, and this is Tableau. They are it's a startup for you to order your food, and then you reserve your table and you go in and everything's kind of ready for you. So a lot better than having to wait and have all those unexpected things, or it's really great for now, during COVID, people to book stuff outside at those different places and order and have, an outside table ready for them. So they have tons of different screens on here. And I can show you some of the, crazy things. You can have friends invite you to different restaurants. In different cases, you can actually order items and pay all through this. So I have my order here. If you go to like pay my order, we have integration with a payment through Stripe. And then you can even do custom formulas on here. So I can do tax and tip, and all that stuff is all kind of coordinated through this as well. And I don't actually want to pay because it'll legitimately pay for that. But then what's also cool is that this has a database here that is then shared with a restaurant's version of that app as well. That way, the restaurants, and I'm not an owner of any of these restaurants, so I can't demo that, but they actually are able to see which parties are there, and they can see the orders and whether they've paid, or send them a notification to make sure they pay. Do all those kinds of crazy things is all possible through that. And then, so you have your more kind of, extreme, complicated use cases like this. Another cool thing is that you can also just make apps for fun. So I actually made an app for my wedding, which is quite exciting. And what's also cool about this, and I was demoing this one so I could show you. So, because this is my app, so I'm able to show more of the publishing stuff here. So I have filled out my Android credentials here. And then all I have to do is start a new Android build, and it will it will create that, and then I can just download that, and then I submit it to Google Play. And then for iOS, again, I have all of my credentials filled out, and then I just start a new test flight build, and that automatically sends it to the app stores where you submit it. So again, the way we don't have to go too much details there, but the way that works is, you still have to own the your Apple and Android accounts. And that's because you own the app, right? We are just helping you create it, right? So you own all of that. So you own the Android and Apple accounts, and then that way you submit it to the app stores. So it's actually the only way it's allowed with Android and iOS, but we basically make it so easy where all you do is get one click, and then all you have to do then is submit that to the app stores. Another cool thing on here is that we have kind of built-in analytics, and that's really helpful for seeing how popular your app is and how it's growing, and how over time that's gone up and down, and how active your users are. Obviously my wedding app had a lot of activity one day, and I have not been actively trying to push this as a startup, but super important for you all to be able to see those metrics and making sure that you're kind of trying to hit and see how people are actually using your platform or your app, which is kind of cool to show off here as well. All right, cool. So that is kind of a big demo. I'm sure there'll be tons of little teeny questions with that in the Q&A section for sure. But I think the only other quick things I wanted to point out before we jump into the Q&A was that I wrote /did interviews with a bunch of the no-code experts in the space. And then kind of compiled all those. So I took all of their individual answers for those, and there are videos for those as well on here. And then I actually wrote a conclusions piece from all of that stuff, a no-code report, if you will. So whether you're an expert in this or whether you are just getting started, this is kind of a great place for you to check out what really all the experts have to say. So more than just me, I'm just one piece of this puzzle. So definitely kind of a bunch of predictions for what's going to happen. Would encourage you to kind of check that out. Would be cool. And then if you are interested in becoming, more of a freelancer, we have an experts page on our site. That's kind of a bunch of people are now actually starting to make whole businesses around this, which is pretty crazy. So you can do that, or you can also just make your own startup on this. All right, so that's kind of the last stuff I wanted to point out. Happy to jump over into Q&A with Julie.
Thank you so much, David, for the presentation and the demo of Adalo in live. It was really great to see what we can build with Adalo. So I have some question for you as an entrepreneur. So is Nocode really a passion, and why? Why did you build Adalo?
Yeah, so I don't know how to code. And so that was partially, I built it to solve my own problem. I talked a lot about solving problems, and I was a UX designer previously. I still do that, but that was exclusively more what I did previously. And that was a little bit of the time when people were saying that if you're a UX designer and you don't know how to code, then you're not a true UX designer. I tried to learn how to code, but it was really difficult. And then it was kind of, while that was happening, I was also watching the trends in development getting easier and easier and faster. And then the trend with prototyping tools getting more and more powerful. So that, when I first started prototyping, you would make what now we call really disgusting looking wireframes, which still have their place, but those are the only things that you would present to people. And now prototyping looks so realistic that I was questioning why can't I just make an actual functioning app with this? I'm able to make it look so real, and I would present it to our company, and they would give us feedback to the whole company, and they would be like, is this feature ready? And they thought that me showing a fake version of it was the actual version. And I had to be like, no, now developers have to make it. So it was partially because, I couldn't make any of the side projects that I had thought about, and partially because I saw this trend of UX getting easier, UX tools getting easier to use. Why couldn't we just kind of take that as a jumping off point? So that was kind of how that had started, and it definitely fits into what I'm most passionate about, which is really helping people bring their ideas to life, and take something that's a concept in your head, and then there's so many parts of that process to getting it out there to be successful, that this definitely fit really well with what I was most passionate about.
Okay, thank you. And how it is to build a no-code company? Did you have some difficulties, and what was the big step for you when you created Adalo?
Yeah, so probably the biggest challenge with no code in terms of making a no code tool is just the number of features that are required to get a first version. You know, one of the big things in the startup entrepreneurship space is really like, you know, you have to get your MVP as fast as possible in order to test it. And that was parts of the stuff I was talking about today, right? Of like, hey, get a working version that you're able to see whether it really like resonates with people. And in no code space, in the actual building of no code products, that's really difficult because your platform itself has to be able to make other people's MVPs. So your MVP has to be able to make other people's MVPs. So there's kind of so many features that go into making it possible. I think that was one of the reasons why, you know, we were working on this kind of behind the scenes for so long before we, before we really launched, was making sure that there was enough features in there where other people could do it. So that part has been challenging, and then trying to figure out what features to do next has definitely been. No code can't do everything right now for sure, and figuring out what stuff So, for example, right, like Instagram, that's at the very beginning, right? It was just like, hey, here's like a picture, and I can edit it, and then they're like, oh, I should be able to share that. That's not that many features. Now they have tons of little things and some editor or editors and stuff like that. But at the end of the day, let's just say at the beginning of Instagram's history, that was like 15 features, right? Well, in no code, your product has to be able to do so much, like 1,000 features. So prioritizing all those things has been definitely very challenging.
Okay, and what will be the next features of Adalo? We saw on your website that people can vote for the next features. Yep. So what will be the next one?
Yeah, so the next, I guess I would say, largest, most exciting thing that we've really been working on, and we're looking to launch at the beginning of August, is the component marketplace. And what that's going to allow, we've been doing that kind of in alpha beta for a little bit. That's going to allow for anybody, remember those components that I had that you can drag in? So, like that navigation bar or that list of images. So that's going to allow you to actually, any developer will be able to make their own component and then have that in a place where other people can then use those components. So that's really kind of like a feature that has lots of features, because it'd be really exciting to have all of those launch. So that's happening. And then more closely, that'll go out next week, is really the ability for you to clone an app. And that will be kind of amazing for the community to share what they're working on and have other people clone not just the full app, like app templates, but also be able to, if you've built like a little cool thing and you want to share that with somebody else and have them be able to use that in their app, like let's say you have a chat feature that you've built, or you have a little social media type of feature that you've built and you want someone else to be able to get that, they'll be able to then copy it and then see how you built it, so that then they can kind of put that into their app. So it's kind of like, you're putting together all these different features, and then that's then how you make your app. So that would be pretty cool to go out as well.
Wow, can't wait to see that. And according to you, what are the most important challenges for Nocode, and what will be the future for Nocode in general?
In the future in general, that's a great question. So I would say, right now we're seeing a lot of entrepreneurs that weren't even possible to build what they wanted to build before. So now they're actually able to make their first versions of their apps, first, second, third versions of their apps. without having to spend $30,000 to, hire somebody to do it, right? Now you can do that yourself and validate whether it's a good idea. So that's kind of, I think, a lot of what's happening at the moment. I think where this will kind of progress next for the future is that, one, no-code platforms are getting more and more powerful, and we're really focused on making sure that you have exactly what you need as your company is going to scale on no-code, so that it's really possible to have really small use cases where you're just solving, an app for your wedding, right? Or all the way up to like building, legitimate businesses on no-code. So things like component marketplace, like I talked about, where you're able to have a developer actually write some custom stuff that maybe you're able to help and get into your apps faster, I think will really unlock a lot of that from the entrepreneurship side. And then the other thing that I talked about, I think, with the future of no-code is there's actually going to be people at either freelancers that are helping small businesses, like consultants, that are going to be able to, software and apps in general have been trapped in this world where it has to be so big and you have to have so many users, and then you end up selling like the data for that to be like how you make your money, like, all the social media networks. That's kind of like a little bit of the route they go on. Or the app has to be so broad that it, solves hundreds of thousands of people's problems, and then that's, how you're going to run your business. But I think amazing power of no code is that, you don't need to have your app. Not that it should be able to scale to that, but you don't need to, if you're able to actually build it yourself and it's a lot cheaper to do, you actually can have a very, very profitable business by solving a smaller problem that's just for 1,000 people, and you have the best solution for those 1,000 people, and they're all willing to pay you $50 a month or something like that, is an extremely amazing prospect that no code now presents, that in the past that would never have been possible, because you would have had to unfortunately pay teams of developers lots of money, and then those 1,000 people wouldn't have made it profitable enough for you to, have a legitimate business, which is why a lot of apps today have to shoot for the moon and like solve everybody's problems. So I don't want to not encourage people to shoot for the moon and solve everyone's problems, but kind of the amazing thing is that if you do that and you realize, wait a second, my customers are actually just these 1,000 people, you can have amazing businesses that are run on that, that are now possible because of no code. And that will then also translate into smaller use cases for individual companies, right? Like that Mile High Karate, like it would never have made sense to keep paying developers tons of money for them to have that app for their, 100 students. And now this is possible. So there's this world of kind of no-code freelancers, and I think a lot of them are very entrepreneur makers who want to solve people's problems, and now are possible to do that. And I think then with those combination, we're going to start moving into larger businesses and enterprises where they're actually, I think they'll have no coders might even be like a role inside of a company for you to figure out, hey, what new types of software can I make? And that doesn't necessarily have to be an app. It could be, like I talked about before, websites, e-commerce, or some little bit of automation where you're connecting, things like Zapier are amazing, where you're able to, and Integromat are amazing, where you're able to connect that little app or software to other things and solve problems and cut down on the amount of time that takes. So it's just kind of unlocking this whole world, right? Right now, only 0.03% of the world knows how to code. So because of that, 99.7% of people aren't able to take these tools that we have and this software language and actually solve problems with it. And I think it's aspirational for us to think that all 99.7% of those people will ever get there. I don't know if my grandma will, be able to using Adalo at any time soon, but but I think the amount of, even if we just raise that level up to 10% over the next few years, and then 15%, that will just have an amazing effect on the problems that we're able to focus on with software. So we won't think of apps as like, oh, well, an app is just Facebook, right? Like, I think we will think of them a lot more like PowerPoint presentations where you have a problem and or like spreadsheets, right? Where now you're actually able to solve those with apps. So I think that'll have a kind of profound change of how we view software.
So Nocode is more like a mindset, actually.
Yeah.
See things differently.
Exactly. Yep.
And it can help also the tech become more inclusive, right? Because
exactly.
There are not many people who know how to code, like you said, and now it gives the power to everyone who wants to create things.
Yeah, and like, because most of the time when you come up with the idea, it's because you've experienced that problem, right? So like, I experienced problems not knowing how to code, so I wanted to solve that. Or like in the Sunscreen example, she experienced the problem of travel being really difficult if you have family and you are in different countries and how that kind of works. And that's more complicated now in our current, world pandemic. But I haven't experienced that. So I, as a person in tech, wouldn't have ever thought that would have been a good idea to make something to solve that problem. So because that she was able to now actually have the ability to do that herself, is like what you're saying, unlocking these problems that we didn't think that software could solve, or have, just been using, basic spreadsheet.
Question from Luigi. It said, when is it possible to pay with PayPal? It was when you were doing the demo.
Yeah. So yeah, that's right. So right now we are integrated with Stripe. We have tons of different ways to do that. We are actually, in that component marketplace. We're working on the PayPal component now as part of that. I believe. So I think one of the developers is working on, those third-party developers is working on that. So if the component marketplace is launching in the beginning of August, I would imagine it'll be sometime. It's hard to say because, again, with developments, if as you know, it's hard to say exactly when. But definitely, I feel confident saying sometime in the next couple of months. I feel good about. So it's definitely something that we know is super important for us to work on, as Stripe was great for us to start on. It works in most places. PayPal works in other places as well. So making sure that works wherever you are is important. So yes, soon.
Okay, thank you. Another question from Luigi. Is it possible to publish the app for different customers with Google accounts different? I don't know if I really understand the question.
You said with different Google accounts. Do you mean like possible to sign in with Google maybe?
Yes, I think it's that.
Yes. Okay. Yeah. So actually, that is another one that we're working on right now for the component marketplace that I was looking at earlier. So that's in the testing-ish stages right now. So that one is coming soon as well. So I actually saw, that one is actually in the development process, not just something that we want to do. So definitely coming soon.
Okay, thank you. So for all the people that want to ask some question also, we will share a link called Ask Me Anything, where David can answer to all your questions if you didn't have the time to ask, or you have other questions after the live. So thank you so much, everyone. I forgot to present myself and to present Genius Global. So this live was organized by Genius Global, which is the largest community of student entrepreneurship societies. Our goal is to bring together all the student entrepreneur mindset to start to build things together. So we are in France, and we share all the same names. So There is Genius Global, and there are more genius in other schools. And I am Julie, and I am the vice president of Genius Global. And if you have some question for student entrepreneurship and you want to join us, don't hesitate. And okay, so I think we are over. Thank you so much. Do you have a last question? An inclusive information for our audience.
Oh, any other? What do you say? Last question?
Exclusive information for us.
Oh, exclusive information. Yes. Is that what you said? Oh, exclusive information. Oh, put me on the spot here. Let's see. I've dropped some of the things. Yeah, I think I don't think we've ever, publicly said when the component marketplace will be launching, but on August 4th is is the date we have. So that's kind of exclusive insider information. I've seen some cool components that are working with that, maybe a calendar or a slider, or kind of some cool rating components with stars. So I'll leave those there for you.
Okay, thank you. And last question. Do you have any advice for students who wants to launch their project?
Yeah, so I think if I had to wrap up, the biggest piece of feedback would be make sure you figure out the exact problem you're trying to solve. And then when I say like the exact problem, I mean like figure out what the core of that problem is and create a solution that just fixes the core of that problem. There are so many parts to different problems, right? And there's definitely parts as you scale and get larger and larger. And I think we always think at the beginning, we have to have all those large problems solved. And I've worked with lots of entrepreneurs, especially in this, no code kind of environment. And it's definitely important to make sure you're thinking and reaching for the stars, but a lot of people then will never launch and will never get their first customer because they're always thinking about, well, what happens when I have 20,000 users and how this will get affected. So if you go in with the mindset of what is the smallest thing that I can produce that will help this problem for one person, and you go out and you do that, and then you start to build from there, you'll have much better results than if you think, I need to have this thing solve the problem for 20,000 people, and I can't launch until I have it ready for 20,000 people to be able to use it. I think those things, always using the lens of that with what you're choosing to create with no code. No code, you're able to make anything, right? I can add a friending feature to my trip planning app, right? But that won't do anything if I don't have, if I only have one user or two users on it, then like they don't really need to friend each other, right? So if you think about it from that mindset of like, just go and get and solve one person's problem and then go from there. I think trying to start with that mindset is the biggest advice I would have.
Thank you so much. It's a really big advice, and I'm sure our audience will listen to it. Thank you so much.
Right.
I want to say a big thanks to David and to Kathleen from Adalo, and also a big thanks for all my team, Julien, and who is just here. So he is a master of the stream for Genius Global. And a big thanks also to all our community and to all the participants. So you will find the replay soon, and you can ask your question again with Ask Me Anything.
Cool. Thank you.
Thank you so much, David. See you soon.
Bye.